first of all, the tagline for this book should be The Lost Apothecary. Men ain't shit. Hello, everybody. Here we are. It's book club day. There's book club things. Should we just get into it? Should we just get into it? Because it's book club day. It's book club day, and we're talking about The Lost Apothecary. But before we talk about The Lost Apothecary, we're going to talk about me. Which is everybody's favorite thing to talk about. No, so, in the last week, I have edited, finally, April, May, June, we lost July, August, September, and October. So I've edited 6 book club videos in the last week, and 4 of them are posted. So, like, I'm finally getting up to date on our book club videos, because the whole point of this was that we were going to stream this, and then I would cut them for YouTube, and then I would post them on YouTube, and I've been, like, 8 months behind the whole time. I hate editing videos, but I've had really, really, really slow days at work, like, literally to the point there's nothing for me to do except sit in front of my desk and be logged on to work for no reason for 8 hours a day. So I've been doing a lot of video editing. So those are all going up. July was not Shadow and Bone. July was actually We Hunt the Flame. So I'm really bummed that we lost that one. I'm bummed. But yeah, so I've edited 6 book club videos, and the problem with that is that I'll be editing a video and I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's something in it, and I'm like, oh, I should remember not to do this next time because this was annoying. And then that video was 4 months ago. So I know the next 4 months I do the same shit. So that's a really good reason for me to stay on top of these and do them as they happen, because now I can be like, hey, let me not do that. So the thing that killed the last, like, 3 months, well, I won't say the last 3 months because I don't know about November. I haven't edited in November yet, and I can't quite remember if I did this. But for August, September, and October, I fell into the trap of, like, in the My Review section, just, like, flat out saying the whole plot of the book and, like, going through the whole way, which was fine, except for the fact that it makes for an hour-long video that I don't want. So I'm gonna not do that this time. We're gonna go back to what we were doing before, where, like, I kind of review it, I talk about things in the book, but I don't talk about the whole fucking plot, because it just takes so long. It takes so long. It takes so long to edit. I hate it. I don't want an hour-long video. I figure, like, the sweet spot for these videos is, like, 30 minutes, and the first, like, 4 or 5 are about that length, and that's a good length. So the assumption here, because these are full spoiler casts, is that you've all read the book. So I don't have to go through the whole thing. I did say that last time, but I now have the hindsight of having seen the video since then. And I'm gonna try and not do the same thing. Because I think what happened with Atlas 6, which was our last one where I said I wasn't going to do that, is I didn't necessarily go through the whole plot, but I still talked for a fucking long-ass time. I don't want to edit that video either, but anyway. The nice thing being, this is a short book, so, like, even if I did go through the whole thing, it wouldn't take that long, but we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. So, like I said, getting off topic. See, this is the kind of stuff that all gets cut out for YouTube. This month, we read The Lost Apothecary. And so one of the things that I tend to struggle with a little bit in our book club, like, streams is kind of remembering things, like, I don't know, names, because usually I try to read the book pretty late in the month just to kind of avoid that, but still, by the time we get to book club day, I've read maybe 3, 4, 5 other books since then. Not so this time. I finished this last night. This was the closest I have ever cut it for a book club time. And I feel like I need to preface this by saying I think this book is maybe not for me. And not to say that I didn't like it, and not to say that I'm going to give it a bad review, but I think this book is maybe not for me. I had a really hard time focusing on it. I think that compounded with the fact that I was also in a bit of a year-end reading slump. And so this was a really quick, like, it's 301 pages. I want to say it's maybe less than 100,000 words. Like, this should have been a one and done in, like, one night read for me. And I think I started it, like, 7 and 8 days ago. And I was struggling. And I think a lot of that was a reading slump. I think I was having a really hard time just staying focused on anything. Like at one point I was like, I'm gonna sit down and get like a big sizable dent in this. And then I fell asleep after 14 pages. And again, not because the book is boring. That has nothing to do with the book. I think it was me. So I'm gonna temper my review a little bit and just kind of be like, don't take this as gospel. I think this is not for me. Because one of the central themes of the book, one of the main overarching themes of this book is childbearing. The ability to bear children, the inability to bear children, the possibility of bearing children. And for those of you who know me, I have zero interest. I have less than zero interest in pregnancy, childbearing, child rearing, any of that. So that was really kind of hard because it's a little bit of a joke with my friends, but also not really a joke. I cannot stand the pregnancy trope in books, which is not what this is. I'll say that right now. Like, this is not a pregnancy trope kind of a thing. But like, as soon as a character is pregnant, I lose all interest. I simply do not care about that character anymore. And again, not the book's fault, not the character's fault. It's simply a preference thing. I don't know what it is. I just don't care anymore. It's one of those, like, I like epilogue babies. I'm happy that you're happy. I no longer care about your story. So, gonna remove from that. So, if I had known that this book was so heavily about childbearing, it would not have been my choice, I think, for myself. So that's the kind of preface to this. Don't take this as gospel. I'm gonna still try to be like fair to the book itself, because I do think it's an interesting premise. That was the hard part of this, is I had a really hard time focusing, but when I would explain the book to people, I'd be like, this is what I'm reading right now, it sounds cool. When I talk about, like, it's a historical fiction mixed with current contemporary fiction, about this woman in the 19th, 18th century who runs an apothecary specifically to kill men. That sounds right up my alley. That sounds right up my alley. And then talking about, you know, why she does what she does and who she's helping. And then you get to the, like, when I explained it to people, it was like, oh, that sounds really cool. You're right. It does. So why can't I fucking focus? Ugh, I don't know. So, the book. There are 3 points of view. And in a multi-point of view book, one of the questions is always how well they mesh together. And I thought they meshed really well together, because you have Caroline, who is a woman in her mid to late 20s in the present. You have Eliza, who is a 12-year-old girl in 1791, and Nella, who is a 42-year-old woman in the same time who runs the apothecary. So all three of their personalities and all three of their, their stories, I felt meshed really well together. Even if they weren't, I swear to God, I think it's the pregnancy thing. I think like 15 pages in, you get the idea that Caroline is pregnant, and it was like, my interest plummeted. And it's totally not the book's fault. It's just me. Because other than that, by the way, Alex, thank you for the biddies. Thank you. Other than that, I really enjoyed her story. The whole thing with basically finding out her husband is cheating on her and then going on their anniversary trip alone and rediscovering this love for history and research that she's always had. Love that. But yeah, Caroline giving up on her dreams to be a wife was like, OMG, kill me. So that felt very realistic to me. If there was a narrative where she was actively giving up her dreams in exchange for a stable family life, like she was actively doing that, I wouldn't be into it. But it's not. Like, it's her looking back and realizing that's what she did without even necessarily realizing that was what was happening. And that was very real. It felt very authentic. It felt realistic, but I don't want to read a whole book about this person. Which, to be fair, you don't. Because you read about half a book about her and then half about the other two. And the only time that I was going to have an issue with Caroline was late in the game. James shows up and there's a line about like her talking about how they have to learn to live individually and as a couple. And I was like, for a hot minute, I really thought she wasn't going to leave him and we were going to have a problem. That was the only time. I wanted to read a whole book about Nella before the start of this book. I don't want to read a third of a book about this person. Fair. So you guys didn't like Caroline is what I'm getting. I liked her. I thought she was very authentic. I thought she just felt very real to me, and if they just hadn't teased that she was probably pregnant like 10 pages in, I might have been doing a little better. Because it plays off that thing where, like, she starts throwing up, and I'm like, the only fucking time you see women throw up in media is when they're pregnant. It's always to show that they're pregnant. So any fucking time a woman throws up in a book or a movie or on TV, I'm like, the bitch is pregnant. Why? That's always what it means. So when she was pregnant and then when she missed her period, I was like, I'm out. But at the same time, that was kind of the thing that connected all three of them. So you had these two different stories taking place in two different time periods, two vastly different time periods. You had three characters from very different scenarios, but the thing that connected all three of them was childbearing. It was Nella's inability to bear children because she had had a forced miscarriage that had left her uterus scarred and she couldn't carry children anymore. You had Caroline, who was terrified that she was actively carrying a child and who, like, may have been the whole time. And then you have Eliza, who had just had her very first period, so she was, like, just entering the part of her life where she's capable of bearing children. But so that was, like, the through point that was carrying all of them together and tying all their stories together was childbearing. And I think that was... I think that's where it lost me. I really do. Which is why it's so hard for me to review it, because I don't want to, like, say bad things, because I think it just wasn't for me. So trying to be, like, positive about it, I don't think it was a bad book. I feel like I need to keep saying that. I don't think this was a bad book. I think it was relatively well written. It's not my favorite writing. She does this thing where she's very specific. Like, she's very specific in how she writes, and the thing that I think I noticed it the most with was technology. And that's, like, the easiest way to explain the very detailed specificity of her writing is when they would use technology, like computers, cell phones, whatever. She told you everything about it. She didn't just tell you, like, oh, she searched on Google, or oh, she used the library's database. She told you what database they were searching, what the UI looked like, what color it was, where on the screen the search engine was. Like, she was, like, using a green search engine bar on the left side of the screen. I was like, I don't need to know all this. I truly don't need to know all this. And then she's talking about, like, physically, like, the direction she was swiping on apps. And it was a lot of detail that I really didn't need. That felt like a bit much. Like, it kind of gave the whole, like, when you're, like, 100 words short on your essay and you have to hit that word limit vibe. I was like, I didn't need to know all of that, but okay. Gaynor was what Caroline wished it was. Gaynor really was. Gaynor and Bachelor Alf were the MVPs of this story. Gaynor is the nicest person in the world for, like, no reason. Catch me never being that nice to a fucking stranger. Not even because I'm gonna be mean. I'm just not gonna go out of my way to be that nice to a stranger. You're gonna show up and, like, lie to the police for somebody you've known for 2 days? I don't think so. But as a character, she was very fun to read. I really liked her. And I'm really glad that, like, she's gonna continue to be a source of support for Caroline going forward. She technically didn't lie. She lied a little bit. She lied because she said she could corroborate all that research. No, the fuck she couldn't. She didn't know what any of the shit in that notebook was. She didn't know what any of the stuff in that notebook was. Not one bit of it. Oh my god. But Gaynor was probably the only thing in this book that felt unrealistic because she was so nice. Is that cynical? I don't know anybody that nice. That she was so nice to a complete stranger. I don't know. If someone I met 2 days ago got me involved with the police and a murder charge, I'd see red. We do love women supporting women, but Gaynor's on another level. Because everything about this book felt so real. You know who felt very, very real? Caroline's husband. Caroline's shitty-ass husband. First of all, the tagline for this book should be The Lost Apothecary. Men ain't shit. That literally is just the whole book. Men ain't shit. He was the fucking worst, and he felt so real because we fucking all know a James. We all know a fucking manipulative, lying little shit like this man. He was fucking textbook. And, oh my god. I'm like, there's no timeline here. I'm going right to the end. What in the fucking Munchausens was this man thinking? As soon as he got sick, there was two lines of thought. There were 2 lines of thought here that I had. I'm literally jumping to the end. And, well, like, third way point. When he gets sick because he's looking for NyQuil or DayQuil or something for his little cold. And she's like, oh, I have eucalyptus oil. And he uses the eucalyptus oil in another room. And then he's like, an hour later, he's sick. I literally Googled, can eucalyptus oil be fatal? And they were like, 3.5 milliliters. That's all it takes for eucalyptus oil to be fatal. I was like, he's gonna fucking die. I was so ready. I was like, I hope he fucking dies. I truly hope he fucking dies. He did not, unfortunately. I literally pulled a Caroline because as soon as she wrote physically in that notebook, amounts of these things to be lethal, I was like, you do not write that in a physical location. Somebody's gonna find that, it will bite you in the ass. And it did. But anyway, yeah, so as soon as that happened, I Googled the eucalyptus oil. And then, Aaron, I thank you for the follow. And then at the hospital, I think my note actually says, what in the fucking Munchausen's is happening? Did he do this to himself? And he did. And the way that, he's so textbook that you can call from a mile away that he did it on purpose to make her sympathize with him and to get her to come back with him. He literally poisoned himself to try to get her to come back. And he didn't apologize for it. He didn't think it was the wrong thing to do. He didn't say shit about it. He did not say shit. He was just like, yeah, I poisoned myself, whatever. I was just, I wanted you to come home with me. Fuck off. Fuck off. Oh my God. He was gaslighting her. He was manipulating her. He was lying to her. And he straight up felt like the most realistic character in the whole book, which was very upsetting. But I digress. That's enough on James. That's enough on James. I swear to God, I have notes. I have notes. This is hard because I started the book 7 days ago. Why did I open my calendar? What am I doing? Is this the part where I tell you, just like Sarah Penner, what I'm swiping up? I am opening my notes app. I'm opening the very first note. I'm gonna tell you exactly how I'm using my technology. When I opened my notepad for the Lost Apothecary, the first note, all caps, never throw away your dreams for a man, Caroline. The first one. And then the second is, she better not be pregnant, but she totally is. Yep. So there were a lot of things that I really liked about this book. And one of the things that I really latched onto very quickly was with Eliza. And first of all, we gotta talk about fucking Lady Clarence, who has a 12-year-old maidservant who she sends to a poisoner to pick up the poison and then makes her administer the poison. And we're just okay with this? We're just okay with this. This is fine. This is fine. No, sorry, Mrs. Amwell. Thank you. Lady Clarence was the other one. Mrs. Amwell. Oh my God, I'm getting confused because Lady Clarence was the other one, and I have thoughts about her too. But yeah, Mrs. Amwell has a literal child who she sends to a poisoner to get the poison and then administer the poison, and that's just fine. And then absconds herself off to fucking wherever, Norwich or wherever she went, yeah, and leaves the girl behind and is like, you can stay in this house with the man that you just killed. Oh my God. I will say, with all the issues that I had with Mrs. Amwell, I do appreciate that she was so ready to kill her husband. She didn't give a fuck. As soon as she saw what was going on with him and what he was gonna do to that girl, she was like, we're gonna kill him. We're gonna kill that man. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. We're killing him. So I appreciate her for that. That was the right response. That was absolutely the right response. Maybe having the child do it, not the greatest idea, but, somewhere. Eliza's whole story I was very invested in, which is interesting for me because, again, I don't generally like reading about children. They're not my preferred, point of view, but I was very invested in Eliza's story. I felt very protective of her from, right away. And I just wanted to hug her at all times, and more importantly, wanted to have a discussion with her because most of her story could have been avoided if women's bodies were not regarded as a dirty and shameful secret not to be talked about. a lot of the conflict in Eliza's story, a lot of the problems in Eliza's life come down to the fact that she's never been spoken to about her own body, because women's bodies are seen as like a shameful secret. We don't talk about this, you know, we hide this away. Nobody talked to her. She didn't, like, her parents, her mother didn't tell her, the woman watching her didn't tell her. Even Nella, when things finally come to light, she tries to say a little something, but she doesn't explain anything. She doesn't explain anything. And this poor girl doesn't understand that she's being lusted after by a pedophile, doesn't understand that she started her period, which is a natural occurrence, and instead internalizes that and thinks that she's being somehow punished by God or haunted by spirits for killing a man. And what killed me was that Mrs. Amwell fucking knew that was what was happening to her and didn't explain it. It was just like, gave her some vague fucking euphemism. And I'm like, no, you need to sit this girl down, draw her some diagrams, and tell her what's going on, because she doesn't understand. Yeah, the whole idea that, like, women's bodies are to be looked at and not spoken of, or to be in, you know, for the pleasure of men and not for themselves, really is what came down to a lot of Eliza's conflict, and a lot of, you know, her circumstances would not have turned out the way that they did if that were not the case. And I felt very bad for her. I felt horrible for her because of that, because all I wanted to do was, like, somebody, it was like, you know what it was? I don't know if any of you watched Bridgerton. It was like watching Bridgerton and being like, all that needs to happen is somebody needs to physically sit this girl down and explain her own body to her. And that will take out like 90% of the conflict. And oh my God, it was like watching Bridgerton, because I had that thought every fucking episode. I was like, if somebody just sits these girls down and explains sex to them, 80% of the conflict in the show is gone. That's all it needs. So I connected a lot with Eliza's story just because I felt like protective of her and I liked her. Nella's story I loved because she kills men for a living. I love that. She kills cheaters and swindlers and pedophiles, and like, she just kills all the worst men, and I love that for her. And then the whole thing where she has to decide if she's gonna, like, allow her poison to be used on a woman was very intriguing. I almost wish that had been dragged out a little bit more, but in a book this size, you know, just didn't have time for it. Yes, men that wrong women. She spends her life killing men that wrong women, and I love that for her. And then at the end, okay, so what killed me was her ending where, like, she's building up to this thing. I still want to know what she had. Like, I would like to know what sort of degenerative bone disease she actually had that she internalized as, like, punishment for what she did. So she had some sort of degenerative bone or joint disease that was causing her a lot of pain and a lot of stiffness, but she internalized that, much like Eliza did. That light bulb just went off. Much like Eliza did, as punishment for all of the killing and for all of the poisoning that she had done. And I, like, the way that she kind of, you know, copes with that at the end is she feels horrible about what she's turned her mother's apothecary into, and she gets one last note for one last bit of poison, and she refuses it. And she's like, no, death will never come to this place again. I will not expose this apothecary to one more thing. And I was like, no, I don't like this lesson. The lesson here is not to stop killing men. Oh man, I was bummed. I was like, no, why is that? I assumed the same thing, the magic potion just annoyed you. So, you mean the magic potion at the end with Eliza? They still believed in bloodletting. So the magic potion with Eliza, I don't think it was magic. So you're asking, why was magic suddenly real? This book, I did see enough people on Goodreads have shelved it as fantasy that it's one of the genres on there. I don't think it was magic. I think it was a home remedy. I think it was a homeopathic remedy of some sort that caused a reaction in her body. And so, like, the thing with Eliza was that whatever it was that she took made her very, very hot. So that when she fell into freezing water, it sounds like it didn't cause her to freeze to death. I don't know, you know, I'm not quite sure what it was in terms of Nella, but I think it was probably just a homeopathic remedy that did something. Did it clear up her degenerative bone disease? Did it though? I don't know. I feel like she was still I don't know. I would like to know what it was. I didn't take it as, but was she actually dying or did she think she was dying? Because those can be two very different things. Because Nella was convinced she was dying. She clearly had some upper respiratory infection. She, you know, I don't know. I'm taking it that it wasn't magic. I'm taking it that it was some sort of medicinal something, because it never tells us. Well, no, it does tell us. It tells us there's venom, just very vague venom, rosewater, fern, you know, whatever. She did not die at the doorstep. No, because it talks about how she mentions in that newspaper article when in her late 20s or early 20s that, you know, she had a friend who continued to be by her side for her life. So Nella lived. It's also, Nella is my dog's name. So that was very weird the whole time. It was very weird. But anyway, at no point did I have any sort of timeline going on here. You took that as Eliza thinking that Nella's ghost talked to her? Okay, so you thought she died. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't get that at all. I got that Nella survived somehow. I was very excited to see that Eliza married little Tom Pepper, and then very sad immediately to learn that he died super young. That was sad. That was sad. Why? Why? It was literally that, like, TikTok sound like, I'm so happy, I'm so sad, like, seconds apart. I felt very bad. No, she didn't murder him. He was a nice man. He was a nice man. You assume she killed him? But he was so nice when he was like 14. So he was nice forever, right? I'm gonna choose to believe that he was fine. Because what did they call it? He had some like lung thing, right? He had some lung thing. You assume she killed him? Oh my god. No, we're all on so many different pages. He died suspiciously young. You guys are all on one page and I'm a totally different page. I didn't think that she died. I didn't think that she killed him. I didn't think that Nella died. We're just all on different places here. I did read like half of this book last night, which again, it's a very short book. You can read it very quickly. Nella totes didn't die. You're with me here? Okay. But he got ganked. Come on. Come on. Okay. I'm very curious. So as I was reading, I knew what my issues with this were, and I'm very curious to see what your issues were. And when I say my issues, I mean like my personal, like, I can't get attached to this because so much of it is about pregnancy and childbearing. And I was like, if that's not an issue, I don't think this is a particularly bad book. I feel like, wasn't this on like a lot of best of the year lists, or like wasn't it a Barnes and Noble like 2021 like one of the best books of the year or something? On that note, that's one of the reasons I'm really excited to see what you guys thought, because a lot of you don't have that same issue that I have, where as soon as somebody gets pregnant, you don't care anymore. So, let's see what you guys thought. I'm more interested in what you guys thought than anything that I thought. Of 18 people, let's see what we got. So 11 of you gave me your names, 7 of you are cowards. Let's see. Hey, this is the first time, I think, in quite a while that we've had like a significant amount of physical readers and a very small amount of audiobook. So 67% physical book, 3 audiobook listeners, and 3 ebooks. That's our smallest audiobook in a while, I think. All right, so of the audiobook, what did you guys think? 4 stars and 3 stars. Pretty regular audiobook. Narration was solid, but Nella's voice was super gravelly, probably appropriate. All 3 narrators. Oh, so they did different narrators for each character. The best one is the one reading the 18th century story. She sounded ominous and mysterious. Hey, look at us! And I dropped my mouse. Everybody finished. Look at us. Okay, hang on. I dropped my mouse. Oh, and then I dropped the book. Dear God. Oh my God. What did I do? There we go. Okay, yay! Everybody finished. No DNFs, we can skip past all of this. Wow, okay. So what did you guys think? Out of 5 stars, our biggest piece of the pie is 3.5. I will say I gave it a 3.5. 3.5. So that was also me. And then we go to a 4.5. Okay, so you guys liked it. I'm excited to see what those of you who really liked it thought. a couple of 2 stars, a 4 star, 2.5, and some 3 stars. So no 5 stars. Nobody had a 5-star review. We had 5 4.5s though, which is that's pretty solid. And our lowest was a 2. Would you reread this book? 50%? No. Straight no. I will say this is the only book of the entire book. No, sorry. This is the second book of the whole book club that I said I would not reread. Life and Death, never getting a reread. So 50% no, 4 maybes, 5 yeses. All right. Okay, so what did we think of the story? Most people gave it a 4. Went from 4 to 3, and then an even split between 2 and a few 5s. So the story was 5-star. Interesting. All right. So for the 4.5s, where do we lose it then? Maybe writing style? Characters. Overall, a 3. Oh, was it a character thing? There's a 1 star. I was gonna say, I see a 1 star. I see a couple of 2 stars. A few 5 stars. Okay, we have a very interesting spread here. I'm very curious to see the actual reviews. Writing style. Overall, again, it seems like we're kind of overall with the 3s, 4s, a couple of 2s, a 1, and some 5s. Okay, we are covering the entire gamut. A 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We had a little bit of everything. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The only one of these that didn't have 1 was the story. Star-Lord, this has gotta be you. This has gotta be you. Ready? I just want to see. Just let me scroll through this. Oh my god. Woo! Wow. Here we go. All right. In my opinion, a review for something you like is harder than for something that you didn't, but let's try anyway. I fully agree. I can write the most detailed review for something I fucking hated, but if I really liked it, I struggle. I really liked this book. The main characters were interesting and relatable. The premise was intriguing, and the book had the perfect pacing. Read it in less than 48 hours, and I don't know the last time I didn't want to put a book down from start to finish. Our POV and the character in this book are great. Despite having half the number of narrators as the Atlas 6, this book had twice the amount of ones that I wanted to keep reading, which is all of them. It was weird opening the book to not only see a character I empathize with, but one that I looked at and went, oh, look, it's me. Isn't that the best, though? Like, even if it's not the reflection that necessarily you want to see, like, seeing yourself in a book like that is a lot. Personally speaking, it added to my investment in the story, and toward the end when she's being interrogated by the police, I was feeling anxious, literally tightening up as I was reading. Good books make you feel things. Our last POV character was Eliza and Peggy. I see what you did there. An agent of change. I swear to God, I thought this was going to say an agent of chaos. An agent of change in the story, and most of the time I found myself annoyed at her childhood innocence, which was intentional. It was refreshing after 2 of our characters, Nella and Caroline, being similar as adult women, that Eliza is in this world naive and looking at it through the lens of a child. Now, the thing I love the most about this book is the story itself. The pacing is perfect. Every time we come to a cliffhanger or a sense of what's going to happen next, we cut back to Caroline, who's also trying to figure out what's happening next, or we cut to Nella and Eliza to illuminate the details of what Caroline just discovered and how they're currently living through that. It swaps through the 2 time periods perfectly, making it seem like both adventures are happening simultaneously, and it does this seamlessly. The structure made me not want to put the book down. Also, a final note about the story to keep it separate from everything in the paragraph above is that with its perfect pacing, all the details are important. Everything from Eliza learning to read to Caroline being someone that travels with essential oils all seem like small character beats, but they all play important parts in the story, and I really liked that. Anyway, this book is great. The characters are complex and relatable, the story is succinct and flies through expertly, leaving you wanting more, but there doesn't need to be more. The story is perfect. Sure, there are some things to nitpick, but those are personal preference things. I don't normally read books again, but I would probably reread this one. Although, a small reason for that is that I paid full price for it. Excellent read, 4.5 stars. Wow! See, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to see a review from somebody who really liked it and see why they liked it versus, like, why I wasn't able to get into it. I found the whole idea of the parallel stories of Nella and Eliza and Caroline to be a much better way to telling a story from multiple points of view without losing the point or boring the reader. I agree. I think that their stories all complemented each other very well. The whole concept of Nella taking over her mother's apothecary after her mother's death and then using it to take care of men that were causing harm to women is an interesting way of her dealing with betrayal by Frederick. Having this parallel Caroline's story of having her own love betray her was a nice plot device. As for Caroline's garbage soon-to-be ex-husband coming to London without asking and almost killing himself to try to regain control over her, because that's what it was, trying to regain control over her, you're 100% correct, just made you want to hate the guy more and more. I was happy that she finally started living for herself instead of living for her husband or living for her yet-to-be-conceived child. Eliza's more than casual interest in what Nella was doing did seem a bit unusual to me because she was only 12, but I guess that was the kind of necessary for the reader to get to the climax of the story and show how the 1791 plot and the current-day plot could be tied together. Having Eliza end up in Brighton at the end I thought was a good callback to earlier in the book, though the mysterious death of her husband does raise an eyebrow. Literally not once, not one time did it occur to me that she would have killed her husband. Did not cross my mind. Overall, I did enjoy having the story unravel for us as it did. Caroline's part was almost like a mystery to be solved, while the 1791 part was basically filling in all the parts for the reader that Caroline either never found out or discovered later on. It was a good book for us to end the year. The book was alright. I have a soft spot for books with dual storylines like this, but I honestly couldn't bring myself to get invested in the present-day story and feel like it could have done well without it. In the historical sections, I really enjoyed the premise, but the lack of anonymity for Nella made no sense to me. Especially with her fake wall and the barrel drop point, the fact that she brought clients directly into her shop seemed weird. Then the author randomly brought in magic potions in the historical section, and it threw me. I'm glad they had a happy ending, but it was a weird addition with the overall tone of that storyline. I maintain they were not magic. There was no magic present. The present-day storyline seriously started pissing me off when Caroline started failing to be able to do historical research and destroyed artifacts when she'd gone to college. Do you mean when she, like, crumbled a part of the paper? I would like to believe that isn't something you forget how to do, especially if it's been a passion of yours, even one you had stopped yourself from following. Also, the whole husband thing. Everything the man did and said was a glaringly bright red flag of manipulation that her responses to him threw me, especially after she saw what he was doing, but effectively decided they could still spend time together. 10 out of 10 would have preferred her running off with Gaynor to have a wonderful adventures exploring history in a proper, non-destructive way. So this was one of the things that I won't say that I struggled with Caroline, but that I can see struggling with Caroline is her response to James. Like, I was frustrated when she went to dinner with him, but I get it. I was frustrated when I thought that she thought there was a chance they weren't gonna get divorced, but I understood. Like, it's frustrating to watch from the outside, but having seen people in situations like that and seeing how people actually respond to those things is pretty accurate. I wasn't surprised by how because I kept having to remember the fact that they've been married for 10 years. Like, they have been married for a decade. So all the things that she was doing made a lot of sense. Like, I wasn't surprised by any of it. Lost Apothecary began as an eye-rolling manifesto against adultery. Sounds like somebody needs to be poisoned. Sounds like somebody asking for a poisoning, is what I'm hearing. I felt like I was the author's therapist, listening to their bitter stories about being cheated on. But the biggest sin of the book is that it's terribly dull, just like Caroline. Oh, we got a hater! Oh, we got a hater in the house! Okay. See where this goes. The dual timelines were fine, but there isn't any conflict to drive the story until about halfway through the book. And she literally finds out her husband's cheating on her. Like, 3 pages in. Like, 3 pages in. In Nella's 1800s timeline, you'd imagine that as an avenging apothecary would have more interesting stories. Caroline's present-day timeline lacks any momentum as she goes back and forth between dealing with her husband and Googling stuff at a library. You can see that. There's simply no mystery or tension to Caroline's plot about discovering the lost apothecary. Everything's solved with a few quick searches. It was frustrating how all the POV characters were pushovers. Nella allowed herself to be easily coerced into giving the poison to Lady Clarence. She never prepared for the possibility that one of her clients would threaten to expose her. I know Eliza's like 12 and well-intentioned, but she's a simple country idiot. She's 12! Leave her alone! I can't believe she survived! What the fuck? Caroline is written as the ultimate pushover, a housewife from farmland Ohio who gives up all her dreams to get married and pregnant. Which is the reality for a lot of people! For a lot of people, it's very realistic. You're killing me. It's just a difficult read when all the POV characters are like this. Oh my god. The writing style was bland as well. It was perfunctory and lacked any beauty and elegance that better authors wield. My biggest gripe was with the writing was the entire last chapter, where the author laid out all the themes and parallels like they were writing a Cliff Notes analysis. There's so many random things about the apothecary that I disliked. The whole plot about James poisoning himself by drinking eucalyptus oil bordered on absurdity. No, the fuck it did not. Clearly you have never known a man like this, because that is not absurd. That is, unfortunately, very believable. The author is strangely preoccupied by fertility. It's the theme of the book! Of course she is! Of course she's preoccupied by fertility. I can't even say the word. Of course she's, like, that's the theme! It's the connecting theme in the whole book! Caroline's felt cute, might apply to Cambridge later moment. Okay, this is Steven. That's gotta be you. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing you in Discord say that. The real MVP was whoever designed the cover, because nothing in this dull story evoked that beautiful covery. Why is it twice? Twice I've said the word covery. Once is weird, twice is a pattern. What is wrong with me? Bro. This is really what kills me. Of course, it's the theme of the book. It's the theme of the book. The James part was believable. It was the police inquiry. I don't pretend to know how the Brits work. Not a fan. The story was boring and predictable. The characters weren't likable. There were occasional exciting plot points, and then it would immediately go back to boring. Fair enough. Fair enough. You told us how you feel. The book had potential for me. I enjoyed the basic premise and almost everything that happened in the 1790s part of the story, but the third of it that took place modern day was so annoying. This seems to be the running theme. People liked the historical part, but didn't like the present. I appreciate that Caroline grew as a character, but she started at such a low point that it was barely even worth it. Ouch! Had the author jettisoned the modern chapters and spent more time fleshing out the world of the 1790s, this would have been a much better book. Overall, it was okay, but I will have forgotten it entirely within a few months. Well, alright. Any quotes that stood out to you guys? So I only saved a couple, I think. Killing and secret keeping had done this to me. It had begun to rot me from the inside out, and something inside meant to tear me open. I wish that wasn't how she viewed what she did. Like, I swear to God, I wish she had said until her dying day that she did the right thing. I like this. First, there was trust. Then, there was betrayal. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot be betrayed by somebody you do not trust. That was a good one. Why did we go to such lengths to protect the fragile minds of children? We only robbed them of the truth, and the chance to grow numb to it before it arrived with a hard knock on the door. Literally, if anybody had just explained reproductive health to Eliza at any point, half of her story would be fine. Healing by way of vengeance. No such thing existed. It never had. Hurting others had only injured me further. Bullshit! Bullshit! I wish that she had, like, been bolstered by it. I do. I understand that's not the point. That's not the theme she was trying to get across, but it's what I wanted. As a student, I'd been fascinated by the lives of ordinary people, those whose names weren't acknowledged and recorded in textbooks. And now I'd stumbled on the mystery of one of those nameless, forgotten people. And a woman, no less. I liked her whole journey with them. I did like, fuck y'all, I like the Caroline storyline. So, I have... the apothecary was a friend to all of us women. The brewer of our secrets. The men are dead because of us. Oh, I remember that one too. Alone again. And yet the freedom was so penetrating and real that I stood motionless, almost stunned for a moment. Oh, because that's when Caroline, like, officially leaves James in her mind. And then history doesn't record the intricacies of women's relationships with one another. They're not to be uncovered. Those were the ones that I saved. But yeah. So we come out to a 3.53. Where does that put this in our... Okay, I know about where that's at. We're not going to talk about... I did get the 2.5 in the fourth one. So we're not going to talk about, like, the whole breakdown, because I'm going to do, like, a separate short little thing for that later. And all my information on that is elsewhere. But yeah, so we're at a 3.53 on this one. So, hey, we did it! We made it through a fucking year of book club. Okay, let me get out of this. That's a year of book club. We did a fucking year of book club. Look at us! Look at us! We did it! Oh, okay, so now let me check on our... Let's see what our voting is looking like right now. So there's first place, second place, a tie for third. Okay, perfect. So we have an easy top 4. So, surprising absolutely nobody, Priory of the Orange Tree. I do want to remind everybody, before you do your voting, it is 827 pages. Know that when you vote. There is an audiobook. It's not like the longest thing in the world. I think it's only like 17 hours. It's not that I don't want you to read it. I really want you guys to read it, but I also know that a lot of you guys don't want to read a book this long. I just want you to be aware of that so we don't have like a 90% DNF rate. So, and then you can see like the little tabs. Those are just parts that I really liked. They're not color-coded to anything. It's just parts that I really liked. So, Priory of the Orange Tree, an absolutely wonderful book. She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. Another Illuma Crate book. I have a very gorgeous version that I like a lot. Look at that. Very pretty. The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. If you guys don't pick this, I'm reading this book this month anyway. I think actually most of these, whatever we don't pick, I'm still reading this month. This has been sitting on my shelf for almost a year now. It might be over a year now. I want to read this book so fucking bad. And I just picked up the sequel. I'm excited for this one. I'm reading it this month regardless, but damn. And our number 4 choice is Finlay Donovan is Killing It. So we have 3 fantasy picks. I think She Who Became the Sun is fantasy. Pretty sure I don't really know, but there's a dragon on the cover. So I'm assuming there's a dragon in the book and it's fantasy. So this is our only one that's not fantasy. Actually, what do you look like? Oh, it's a nice pretty blue underneath. So yes, if you missed it, my theme in my January reading is I do it for the girls and the gays, that's it. And so these are our choices. So Priory of the Orange Tree, Finlay Donovan is Killing It, The Bone Shard Daughter, or She Who Became the Sun. All books that I'm very excited to read. 3 fantasies and 1 comedy, I think. Comedy? So yeah. Hooray. Have a great rest of your night. This was a lot of fun. I love when you guys leave long reviews. And have a good one. I'll see you next time. Happy New Year! Technically, because this is gonna go up. Never mind. Actually, I was gonna say it'll go up on YouTube, but it'll be after New Year. But whatever. Happy New Year. Thank you for a wonderful year of book club. This has been a ton of fun, and I'm really glad that we ended up doing this. So, and I will see you in January with one of these.